for coming today to talk. So we have Sarah Roche and Kellyann Monaghan are going to speak about their work in the exhibition, What the Water Does. They know each other from school, correct?
That's right,
and,
more.
Yep, more college. So, and then last year they actually went to Ireland together, paint together. So that's where some of this work comes from. So each will, tell a little bit about themselves, about their work, and then talk about the show, and then field questions at the end. So let's give a warm welcome to Sarah and Kellyann.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Tina. Thanks for hosting the show. It's very nice to have an opportunity to exhibit work with Kellyann, who we did go to more together, and it's, I feel like I know almost everyone here, so this can be kind of conversational. If anyone has any questions at any point, I think you should just ask. And Kellyann and I went to more together in the 90s, like the early 90s, and studied painting together. And I mean, I think her work is so amazing and also extremely timely. It's very much of the moment and very spontaneous and expressive of like the overwhelming power of water and nature. So I've been really admiring her work for years, and this particular body of work in particular. It was wonderful to have a chance to paint together in Ireland. So when we were in college, we would go painting outside, and it was part of our practice in school and then afterwards. But since Kelly lives in Brooklyn now, I don't get to paint with her as much as I used to, but we've taken it up again lately. And going to Ireland was a really great opportunity to just get out there, and there's something about the water there. It's like, all around, and it rains a lot. We're painting in the rain a lot. Painting in the rain is fine, and oil painting in particular is good in the rain because it doesn't run. There was a painting on the end that's a watercolor. They did two watercolors that are framed there at the end. One of them, we were at the end of it seemed like the end of the universe, the end of Ireland, on the tip of the peninsula, and the car had car problems, had to call the car guy to come and bail me out. And I was very stressed out, and I'm like, I can't even paint in oil today. So I just did a watercolor, that's the one on the top. And it was raining, and it was blowing, right? Like we were sitting there behind a stone wall, kind of sheltering and painting. But I still like that piece, despite the anxiety of the day. And I do think that, like being in the elements, being right up in the element, like you are responding to that, you're tapping into that, and it's a challenge. And for me, it's a recharge. Like I recharge when I go out and paint in nature. I do paint in my studio all the time, too, but almost all the work you see here that I made is plein air work, so I did it on site in some amount of time. What else can I say? A lot of the places, like for example, these three paintings were painted in a location in my hometown in New Jersey. And it was a place that I've gone to as a child and then like as an adult, and I just return to that place over and over. And I feel like I definitely recharge. Like there's certain spots, they're not particularly special spots, but they're special to me. And if I go to that spot, I feel like I can somehow tap into something. And these ones are also these two are from Philadelphia, like painting by the river. Also the painting back behind Tom there, that was at the Delaware River. This is the Schuylkill River. And this is Tom's River, which is where my family live. And that's the cedar water. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with the cedar water that's in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, which is it looks like tea or coffee. It has a lot of tannic acid in it. So I mean, it's just an observational painting. I made it on the 4th of July this year, actually, oddly. I was sitting on the deck painting on the 4th of July. But of course, my family went through Sandy, and that river came up and went into their house. And then went back down again. But the amount of anxiety that I feel about the climate from weather events like that is very high. And just the climate in general, I'm concerned about what's going on, and I think I think the show, on one level it's just a landscape show, but on another level, for me, I am always thinking about what could we do, really from the top is where we need to start. What can we do as individuals, but what can we do from the top to sort of change the direction towards a more sustainable future with the climate? It's something I think about all the time. So, and obviously I think Kelly is thinking about that too, because looking at her monoprints and her paintings on this side. I'm going to give it over to you, Kelly, for a few minutes. So.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm going to start by just sharing a story about when I first really connected with Sarah in art school. I was a pretty emotional, mopey, kind of angry art student or volatile art student. And also living in the dorms at Moore, Cherry Street, Sartine Hall was kind of an emotional and kind of, and it was I think an old veterans hospital. But I was really struggling one semester midwinter and sitting in my painting studio being mopey, and Sarah came along. She said, "Why don't you come back to my apartment, my house? I'll make you dinner." And she threw in a couple of Elio's pizzas in the toaster oven. And for some reason, that moment, she really lifted my spirits and made me feel okay about the world and just kind of grounded me. And I was like, all right, I can get through this art school situation. And anyway, ever since then, those Elio pizzas sealed the deal for me.
I haven't had those in probably 20 years.
And Sarah was just a year ahead of me in art school, so I kind of Sarah and all the class a year ahead of me at Moore, I kind of really looked up to them, and I kind of glommed onto them. Even though a year difference now does not really make a big deal at all. At the time, it really meant a lot to me to be a part of that painting crew at Moore. All right, so I started my love for landscape actually in Philadelphia. I did a few cityscapes from Moore, from the windows, and also looking out on the parkway. We had lots of opportunities to go out and draw on the street. Studying art in Philadelphia was really ideal because we were in this small central city, but we had the art museum down the road, architecture, access to the Wissahickon, and the parks were also really amazing. And what has kept me drawn to the landscape over all of these years is kind of something indescribable for me, but I think it's something about being caught in the moment. For years, many years before I started doing these, most recently in the last 2.5, 3 years, these storm paintings, I was obsessed with the urban landscape and working from urban architecture, which started in Philadelphia at a studio I had at 3rd and Market with Trish, where are you, Trish? And Kate, who's here, two of my old studio mates. I fell in love with the city at night and the way that the windows felt like they were turning inside out at night. I was mostly drawn to the artificial color of light at night and the subtle, magical, and mysterious sublime qualities of the city at night. And I continued that love of the landscape and the urban landscape as I moved to Brooklyn. But one thing I always felt as a struggle in painting from architecture and the cityscape is I'm a very organic and intuitive painter, and I respond kind of impulsively in a way to the landscape and emotionally to the landscape when I look at it. I felt sometimes trapped by the architecture of the city, both literally in painting and also literally in my life. So I tried to, for many years, to get out into the landscape and paint. I've had the lucky relationship and marriage to a southern French man, and I've been also traveling to southern France to paint during the summers. I was also away as an exit from the in-laws. And so I've been trying to find ways to constantly connect to the landscape, and I'm interested both in the beauty of the landscape, but also in the landscape can be as an escape, as a way of just kind of slowing down and looking at the world, but I'm also interested in the symbolic qualities of the landscape. And as a painter, my process is very alla prima, very wet to wet. I take pride in making things that are hard to paint look easy to paint. And almost, my paintings sometimes for me are almost like a musical haiku. I try to figure out how much can I say with a little, and how powerful can I make a moment out of just the right amount of brushstrokes. My father was also a musician, so I feel like sometimes my connection to painting is also sort of musical. I get kind of worked up when I'm painting, like, and try to say, like, how can I get this just right? Like, how can I get this color just right? How can I get this mark just right? So working from the landscape and knowing I have a limited amount of time, whether it's on location or responding responsibly to the images of the storms, I'm always trying to figure out how can I get this accumulation of moments into this one frozen rectangle, this one frozen space. So to backtrack, the trip to Ireland was ideal. I had an opportunity from my university to travel, and I had a travel grant. I wanted to do an artist residency in Ireland, but I was also bringing along my family. And I decided, well, I'm going to make my own artist residency when I'm there. So who would I love to paint with in Ireland other than Sarah Roche? She would be a great painting partner.
Totally lucked out.
Yeah. So Sarah and I, we had a lot of fun painting and responding with each other. And I was drawn back to Ireland partially because of my Irish roots and partially because I haven't been there in about 20-some years. And the Irish landscape, you know, it's there's a lot of mythical kind of folklore about the Irish landscape. And the one thing I felt that when I was there 20-some years ago was you're just completely surrounded by water. I feel like the Irish people, and I felt when I was there, you feel small in comparison to the world and to the ocean, and you really feel the power of the water when you're there. And it's both beautiful and powerful. And yes, probably I started making these landscapes, the storm pieces, probably about 3 years ago. I also lived in New York City during Sandy and teach in Long Island, where most of my students live along coastal communities. And although my personal street wasn't flooded, my neighborhood was flooded, and I saw how much my students struggled with life after the storm. I mean, it really slowed and grounded everything to a halt, like in New York, like for like a good amount of the semester. And also as a painter, like I mean, again, I kind of have like a gut reaction to a space when I paint it, like whether I'm outside in the landscape or looking at images or secondary resources. And I'm constantly obsessing over the weather. Like, I'm always looking at weather.com. And weather.com, they have those clickbait videos that come up, right? Like the craziest tornado ever, or the craziest like cars slammed by the water. And so I started clicking on them, and then I would just be watching them, either on my phone or my laptop, and sometimes like I would have like this gut visceral reaction to it, and I was like, oh wow, this could be kind of interesting to paint. And also parallel to about the time that the last presidential election started to come.
The red flag.
Yeah, I mean also, just listening to the news and just a constant like kind of tension, anxiety, awareness of like what's going on in the world, what's going on in the weather. Like it just seems that we're constantly being pummeled by information. So, but selfishly as a painter, it's very cathartic for me to make these images, and again to have this physical response. I love paint, I love the juicy qualities of paint, so selfishly as a painter, it's also kind of enjoyable to make these marks, to make these surfaces, to make these textures, and to see again in a physical moment, how can I narrow down this crazy information into like a little panel. As you can see, most of the work is small. I do make large paintings, but I find it much harder to be satisfied with them, so I don't show them as often. They're a little bit more, as I said, I like to make things that are hard look easy. It's harder to make a big painting feel just right in that performative quality. And I'm just talk briefly about Monotype, and then we'll hand it over to question and answer. And I just also want to say one or two more things about Sarah's paintings. Monotype for me is very similar to the Alla Prima painting, the wet painting. Monotype is the act of, how many of you guys know Monotype? Monotype is the act of creating on a surfaced plate. It's the painter's version of printmaking, basically, is what I like to say. You cover an entire plate with paint or ink. This particular process I use, there's many different processes in Monotype, but the particular process I'm mostly drawn to, which actually I started a long time ago at Moore, is subtracting of light, subtracting of mark and texture until I get this clarity of image. So anywhere you see white marks or textures, it's been done out of Q-tips, paper towels, paintbrushes. Sometimes I go back in and I paint back in certain marks. So, and Monotype, you have a limited amount of time to work on the plate, so in a similar way, it has the same energy for me as actually painting in the landscape, because you have to get it done. You have to be decisive, and it's either do or die. The images, I have lots of reject prints, piles and piles of reject prints. So, like, although one print may not take very long, it's a culmination of lots of different efforts that gets to that moment. So that again is for me, I think, where it's a connection with things that are performative, like music or dance. Like, it's all about all the other times I made a print and it failed, and this one happens to work. And again, the images work really well on the emotional quality of these spaces and these kind of anxious and destructive moments. So, and also I just want to say, I think I love about Sarah's, and I feel like we have in common, but you know, she has a slightly different energy for dealing with it. I think the watercolors have a lot in common with Monotype. Or just again, every mark you put down has a meaning. Every mark you put down has an intentional purpose. Like, you can't hide. You can layer the marks, but every layer of mark is somehow integrating and connecting into this lasting image. So I feel like the monotypes and the paint, Sarah's alla prima paintings and also her watercolors all have that. Again, you have to really mean what you say when you put that mark down. And it's really hard to get it to work and get it to be convincing and for it to be a successful image, because again, you can't hide with watercolor. Everything you put down stays, and you have to be very conscious about how you work up the layers between background, foreground, and middle ground, transparency versus opacity. And for me, one of my favorite pieces, besides the one that Sarah put on the postcard, is one that's over here behind Kate. I love that juxtaposition of the beautiful landscape, whether it feels like there's an oncoming storm or a storm that is passing. But I like the gritty and the pretty. And I really love the gritty quality of how she could have ignored and edited out the graffiti on the rocks, but she included it. And I love how it makes that connection to like the city, man-made, weird, strange marks on the rocks to this, you know, very moody landscape. I really like that juxtaposition. I find it beautiful. So there we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe I'll say just one more thing about watercolor, because you were bringing that up. I think watercolor is a practice that I've done like my whole artistic life. It's probably the first medium that I fell in love with. And although I primarily do paint in oil most of the time, I think there's something so elementally fascinating to me about watercolor. I do love it so much. And I do love the layers. Building, trying to plan through backwards how you're going to get to the front of the piece in a weird way. But it's always a surprise too. It's not like you can have some sort of plan, but in life, plans only get you so far, and you just have to respond to what happens along the way. In a painting, you know, you make certain decisions at the beginning that are going to affect the outcome, but you can't be sure of the outcome because there's so many things in play in any given painting. You know, it's a great exercise for sure.
The surprise element is this one quality I love about your watercolors, and that's also why I love the process of Monotype so much. When you roll a piece of paper on a plate through the press, there's always a surprise element. Like, you're not sure what's going to happen when you pull that paper on the print.
Yeah, it could be really magical. And then, you know, this one, for example, I was painting in the rain. So, and there's a few others over there. I mean, a lot of these I actually was painting in the rain, watercolor, which is, sometimes you do have to run away, because it could wash out. But this one, I was painting it, and I was at the Schuylkill along the river, and it started raining. I ran to the car, and then it stopped raining. I ran back, and then it started raining again. I went back. So it's like running across the park with like my stuff multiple times to get this kind of insane painting. I think it's like totally, it's on the edge of out of control, because it was not really a very controllable situation. But I enjoy that. there's been a couple of occasions in my life when I've almost gotten struck by lightning while painting because I like the edge of being out there in the weather.
Landscape painters will be on the edge.
Yeah, on the edge.
Like those guys following the tornadoes with cameras.
John was with me. My brother was with me one time. We were out painting in the Poconos. You weren't with me, but you were in the park with me that day. And we were trying to capture the paint. My friend and I were trying to capture the sky changing, and the weather came up. This painting does not exist here. It's actually in the basement in a heap because it's not a good painting. But I was trying to paint, quickly, and then the weather came up, and we had about a mile to run back to the car through the woods, and the lightning came, and it was scary, actually. What had been a path became a river, and I was running up this path. The water was over my ankles, and the lightning hit the tree about over there, and it came through. I mean, I felt it. I threw that painting involuntarily into the woods because it was just a shock, And then I went after it, and then ran across the hilltop and made it back to the car. So, I don't recommend that. I have some students here, so I'm going to say don't do that. Don't be like me. When you see the lightning coming, go away. But it is exciting, though, definitely. So, my witness to that. Yeah. I don't know.
Gotta get that painting done.
The painting still exists. I'll never throw it out, but it's not a very good one because it got smushed in the bushes. Right. So, anyway, does anyone have any questions or anything at all? You could ask Kelly or myself.
This isn't really a question, but I heard the word capturing.
Yeah.
I've always been amazed that, painters go out and try to capture something.
Yeah.
And living our lives with fleeting impressions every single instant, and then we choose those moments which are capturable. I remember being with my dad on the Donegal coast about 30 years ago, and there were 6 weathers going on at the same time. Right there, and there was mist, and there was a thunderstorm going on, and there was rain, and there was sun behind us, and there was hailing, and all the same moment. And I remember turning around and saying, "This, I don't know, I don't believe you could capture this."
You can't really. You cannot really capture it. It's not possible, right? It's just it's a fun attempt, but it's not really something.
Reality is the problem, right?
It's not really possible to do it. Actually, it's fun to try.
You say it's fun to try, but you also speak about frustration. How do you know the difference?
But isn't that part of just the creative process that you struggle sometimes and get frustrated, and then sometimes you have that moment of something that you are chasing. You have a good moment sometimes, and it's a whole series of ups and downs, of course. Yeah.
Like any artist, if you're not embracing the struggle, then might as well not do it.
Or you're probably repeating yourself and getting the same effect of if you haven't taken that risk.
I'm Marianne. I'm actually an old painting teacher of several of the people here. More, so it feels great to see this work. It really does, and to know how connected you all are still to it. And I just wanted to say I loved hearing all your stories about the frustration and the heaps of things that didn't work. And it's really good to connect with that, and also just the serendipity of creating, because sometimes you're not in the driver's seat. The painting tells you what it wants to be, and I'm very aware of that. Sometimes my will gets in the way, and I have to just listen to other things. And I just love the spontaneity. The room is alive. I'm really happy. I'm really happy I drove down.
I'm so happy
you're happy.
That's so nice.
And actually, Marianne, I remember one time, maybe around the same time when Sarah made me that Elio's pizza. I remember I was having a tough March, in painting. It was just a really nice day. And you brought me. Oh, I forget the name of the painter. Oh, not Marston Hartley. Another American landscape painter, Charles Birchfield.
Oh,
You brought me a book of Charles Birchfield landscapes and how he made so many paintings about the moody weather of March. And I remember just it really lifted me up. I'm like, okay, I can make art about this miserable month. Anyway, Thank you, Marianne.
Yes, of course, thank you so much. And I also want to thank everybody that came here, because I really appreciate that you would come out on Saturday and look at some paintings and listen to us talk about it. It's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, we did a good job, we said it all.
I know. Well, if you have any other questions, you think you can direct it to us individually also. So thank you very, very much for coming.